In 1839, the most powerful empire on Earth went to war to defend its right to sell drugs to another nation. Not oil, not gold, not territory, drugs. And when that nation, China, the largest economy in the world at the time, tried to stop it, Britain sent its navy to force the poison back in. This isn't a footnote in history. This is the story of how the British Empire became the largest drug cartel the world has ever seen, and how it used that empire to reshape the entire global order. If you think the war on drugs is a modern invention, wait until you hear who started the first one and lost on purpose. Let's go back to the beginning. By the late 1700s, Britain had a problem. The British loved Chinese tea. They loved Chinese silk. They loved Chinese porcelain. Every ship that left London for Canton came back loaded with treasure, but every ship that left China for London came back nearly empty-handed of British goods, because China wanted nothing Britain made. China was self-sufficient. Wool coats were useless in Guangzhou's climate. British manufactured goods held no appeal. The Qing Empire, under Emperor Qianlong, made this brutally clear to a British delegation in 1793. "We possess all things. I set no value on objects strange or ingenious, and have no use for your country's manufactures." That single sentence humiliated the British crown, and it created a massive trade imbalance. Britain was paying Chinese tea in silver, real hard silver, and draining its treasury at an alarming rate. Something had to change. The East India Company, which by this point functioned less like a business and more like a private government with its own army, found the solution. Not a product China wanted, a product China would become addicted to. Opium. The East India Company held a monopoly on opium production in Bengal, India. Poppy fields stretched across the Indian countryside, farmed under company control, processed in company factories, and shipped by company vessels. But here's the clever and cynical part. Selling opium directly to China was illegal under Chinese law, so the company didn't sell it directly. It auctioned the opium in Calcutta to private traders, who then smuggled it into China through networks of corrupt officials and coastal middlemen. This gave the East India Company total deniability. They could claim, with a straight face, they never sold opium to China. Technically true. Practically, they built the entire supply chain that made it possible. And the results were catastrophic, by design. By the 1830s, an estimated 12 million Chinese citizens were addicted to opium. Entire provinces were economically paralyzed. Soldiers in the Qing army were found too intoxicated to stand guard. Government officials, scholars, merchants, the addiction crossed every class line. Silver that had flowed into China for over a century now reversed direction, flowing out to pay for the drug. China's economy, once the envy of the world, began to hemorrhage wealth. The Qing government tried everything. They banned opium, they executed dealers, they tried education campaigns. Nothing worked, because the demand had been engineered too deep and the supply chain was too profitable for too many people, including corrupt Chinese officials who took bribes to look the other way. Then, in 1839, Emperor Daoguang appointed a commissioner named Lin Zexu to end the crisis once and for all. Lin Zexu was incorruptible, a rare thing in this story, and he moved fast. He blockaded foreign trading posts in Canton. He forced British traders to surrender their opium stockpiles. And then, in a move that shocked the world, he destroyed over 20,000 chests of opium, worth millions of pounds, by dissolving it in trenches filled with water, salt, and lime, and flushing it into the sea. For the Chinese, this was a moral victory. Their commissioner had stood up to foreign poison dealers and won.
For the British Empire, this was an act of war against private property. Think about that for a second. Britain treated the destruction of illegal narcotics that were poisoning an entire nation, as an act of aggression deserving military retaliation. British merchants lobbied Parliament furiously, framing Lin Zexu's actions as an attack on free trade and British commercial rights, and Parliament listened. In 1840, Britain declared war on China. Officially, historians call it the First Opium War. Unofficially, it was the moment the British Empire chose profit over any pretense of morality on the world stage. The war itself was almost embarrassingly one-sided. Britain's steam-powered ironclad warships and modern artillery tore through China's outdated wooden fleet and matchlock muskets. British forces seized coastal cities one after another: Canton, Amoy, Ningbo, Shanghai, moving up the coast largely unopposed. By 1842, China had no choice but to surrender. The result was the Treaty of Nanking, the first of what China still calls the unequal treaties. China was forced to pay a massive war indemnity. 5 ports were open to British trade, whether China wanted it or not, and Britain took Hong Kong as a colonial possession, a status that wouldn't end until 1997, a century and a half later. But here's the part most documentaries skip. The treaty said nothing about legalizing opium. Britain had gone to war, humiliated an empire, and annexed territory, and the opium trade continued exactly as before, just with less resistance. China tried to fight back diplomatically and militarily one more time in 1856 in what's called the Second Opium War. Britain, joined this time by France, won again. The new treaty that followed didn't just continue the opium trade, it formally legalized it. China was forced, by treaty, at gunpoint, to accept the very poison it had tried to destroy 17 years earlier. By the late 1800s, opium had become one of the single largest sources of revenue for British India. At its peak, opium exports accounted for roughly 1/6 of the entire revenue of British India. Think about what that means. An empire that presented itself to the world as a civilizing force, building railways, courts, and universities, was funding a significant part of its colonial administration through the deliberate addiction of an entire foreign population. This wasn't a rogue trading company acting alone. This was official imperial policy, debated and approved in the halls of the British Parliament. And the human cost in China was staggering. By the early 20th century, some estimates suggest as many as a quarter of Chinese adult men were opium users. Productivity collapsed in affected regions, families were financially destroyed, public health crises multiplied. China's century of humiliation, a term still used in Chinese political and historical discourse today, begins directly with these wars. And it's not ancient history to them. Every modern Chinese leader, when discussing foreign interference or Western hypocrisy, can trace the argument back to 2 wars fought explicitly to protect a drug trade. So why does this matter now, in 2026? Because the pattern never really disappeared. A dominant global power identifies a trade imbalance, engineers a dependency to fix it, and uses military or economic force to protect that dependency when it's challenged, all while wrapping the entire operation in the language of free trade, progress, and civilization. Sound familiar? Historians and economists still debate how directly this connects to modern trade wars, sanctions regimes, and resource conflicts, but the core lesson is impossible to ignore. Empires rarely admit what they're actually protecting. The British Empire didn't fall because of the opium trade, but the opium trade is one of the clearest windows we have into what empires actually protect when push comes to shove. Not values, not civilization, revenue. China never forgot, and maybe neither should we. If this kind of hidden history, the stuff that never makes it into textbooks, is something you want more of, make sure you're subscribed, because next week we're uncovering another empire's darkest financial secret, and it's closer to home than you think.